All right, welcome to the Cryptography Working Group, June 5th, 2025. Let me go ahead and share my screen. If I can find the share button again. All right. Got a couple outstanding pull requests. Basil, this is an update for the algorithm families. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's for the algorithm families, and it doesn't add I think just one additional algorithm, but what I wanted to kind of go through here is through these patterns, because we have kind of the idea is to have optional parameters and also some fixed arguments, right? And then just
Yeah.
you could perhaps just review that and see if you think that makes sense, what I proposed here. Just wait for Steve.
Yeah. No, I'm listening. I was just shutting a door to my printer.
So I went through this list basically and just looked at for some inconsistencies and for some kind of rules. And the idea is here basically that we either have placeholders that we have, like the first one here we have RSA PKCS 1115 has a digest algorithm, which here we just have as a placeholder, and that's described as in curly brackets. And so that's one thing. And then we have optional arguments, which we have here. Basically, the digest algorithm here is optional, and that's why we have these brackets there. And yeah, and the third thing, third convention basically is the round brackets, where we just have fixed alternatives. I think, for example, if we look at AES, we have a list of all the modes just explicitly written there. So yeah, I thought that should give kind of a good flexibility in what we want to have optionally, if we want to write options explicitly or just provide placeholders. So that's the change here. So it's not yet adding more algorithms. So there is still kind of a list of algorithms I have to go through. But yeah, so just from the structure of the schema, that would be the at least for now the final structure.
Got it. No, that makes a lot of sense. This is a lot more consistent, I think, than it was previously, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, no, this is actually good.
Yeah. I also try to kind of be more consistent with using, with the placeholders, some camel case instead of sometimes underscores, so things like that.
Right. Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
I like that. Makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Okay. So no new algorithms, no new algorithm families, just improvements on what we currently had, which I yeah, totally in favor of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. No, this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. What I will try to do until our next meeting next week is to have kind of a first final to finalize the list, at least with the algorithms that I have in the pipeline. So
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, the LMS and these, they have
Yeah.
quite a lot of different parameter sets, and they are defined by a hash function, and then a few internal parameters of the of the different variants there.
Right. Okay.
So the underscore, what they are basically part of the name, right? It was not a specific syntax for the LMS, right?
The
The underscore is basically part of the naming, not a syntax that.
yeah,
Because,
no, it's
yeah, okay.
it's not a regex thing or
Mhm.
I think that's
Okay.
just I use the same convention there as in the specification in the NIST or in the RFC that defines LMS, I believe.
I think you missed a bracket, right? Hold a second. This
Well,
one,
he's
the
got
closing.
Oh,
the
yes,
closing bracket. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. It would be really good if we actually came up with a pattern to validate the patterns.
Mhm.
A regex maybe to validate the patterns. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I don't even know if that would be too complicated for regex. I'm not sure. I don't know if you could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
maybe
yeah,
it's
it would be
yes.
good to have some kind of validation on the patterns at some point.
Think with the given grammar, we can kind of use ChatGPT to easily write us a Python script for validating it.
Let's hope it doesn't hallucinate on us. It's gonna barf all over our algorithms. Okay.
I have
Very
a
good.
question for you, Basil. I just read your pull request, and for example, with that, in the following example, for example, with iOS, does this cause a reading problem? Because for me, it's not very clear. Is the entire set optional, or are the individual alternative optional?
So in that case, it's so everything that is in the brackets is optional, and so you could write just AES. That would be valid, just in case if you don't, if you happen to not know which variant it is, and then if you want to use the optional thing, then it must be AES -128 or 92 or 256.
Understood. Okay, so we can write just IES.
Yes, I thought. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I thought it's probably if you have. I mean, just if you have some scanner or so that is not able to get those details, then you're still able to have a valid pattern.
Okay. Thank you, Basil.
All right. So, did you want to just make that correction to the
Yes. Yeah.
to the LMS pattern? And then let me know when that's made, and I'll go ahead and merge that in. Nicholas, you created a Python script to generate the algorithm families.
Yes.
So the goal here was to, I think it was being done in the wrong place, if I remember right. Let's
Yeah, I
see.
wasn't sure. I didn't understood the message from what his name, but so from my understanding, it's what we talked about. But yeah, so I didn't see there any gaps in the discussion we had, but happy to understand it better.
Yeah, so what we were planning on doing is, at least this is what I kind of had in my head, so that the list would be completely decoupled from the schema, is to where's the I just want to look at the full file. That's why I'm pulling it out.
Mhm.
So if we look at the, we look at, yeah. So this is the schema for the definitions. The definitions themselves are here.
Mhm.
What you can't necessarily do very well is use this family
Mhm.
as an enum, like if you want to describe the family. So what I was envisioning, because this is the definitions of all the algorithms, what I
Right.
was envisioning is to have extend this schema so that not only you have the algorithms, but you actually have the family enums as well. And you'd have an array of enums that then you could reference from the CycloneDX 1.7 schema. So that way the names are not actually in the 1.7 schema, they're external in this same file where the definitions are. But why we wanted the script was so that you could just define the algorithms in one place, run the script, and it would automatically then just regenerate the enum, the list of enums in this same file.
Okay, so we just changed basically the target now from the schema to the, okay.
Yeah,
But,
and then we'll just have to update the, we'll have to just update the schema for this.
Yeah.
Which is fine, we can do that. But that way, both the full definition of the family as well as the family name enum are both externalized, and they can grow independently of the specification.
Okay, I thought okay, from my understanding last time was like this is external and we just have the enum basically automatically generated from this schema or from this definition. So we have it in there and it's basically self-contained. We don't reference anything else. But I think that's also fine. Just wondering how is it then with the validation from a tooling perspective? So how can we make sure that this is validated correctly?
Yeah, it's very simple, actually. We do the exact same thing for SPDX license IDs. So for SPDX, because they have that license list is updated like, I don't know, like maybe 4 times a year or something like that. We actually have a schema and for the SPDX licenses, and this is basically the enum for that. So
I see.
yeah, so I guess we're gonna have to. So I guess how it's gonna work. We've got the thing for the algorithms. We've got, let's see, we've got this is the algorithm. So this is where the definitions are at. We'll run the Python script, which will then update the cryptography definition schema, and there would be a new property in here for the enums, the list of enums. And then how it works is that in the 1.7, let's just go to the 1.7 schema, and I'll do a search for SPDX. Here we go. So when you are defining a license, it's going to just use this, and that's really it. Now you can go all in and like this is just the actual like this particular one just contains just the enums, so you don't need to say, well, go to this property, but you can say, well, go to this certain property that defines the enum in that schema.
Okay.
You
I
follow
see.
me? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So it
Okay.
should be really, really simple to do. And that way the definitions are completely externalized and can evolve
Understood.
independently of the specification.
I see. Okay. Yep, that makes sense. Okay, then I will change that. It should be easily done. But yeah, thanks for the.
So I'll just say I just updated some tooling to reference the 1.6.1 list because we were encountering licenses, and SPDX does update quarterly. So
Yeah.
I think the concern, the thing is, this is a great way for us to do this. Absolutely, if you're online and you can access the current list, but we have to be mindful, Steve, going forward, that for offline tooling, when you go offline, you don't have internet access. That we need to start creating more point releases of Cyclone for every time you update these independent lists. So I would,
Yeah, the most I don't know about all, but most of the libraries that we have, like the Java one, for example, the JavaScript, etc., they all include the schemas locally, so you can run these
yeah,
like in a air-gapped environment. And simply upgrading the version of that library just brings in the updated SPDX license list. Is kind of how we do that, but I don't think we have consistency across all the implementations. I don't think all of them do that.
yeah. So effectively, we need some type of means for everybody whenever we produce need to update this list. We need a way to make sure that we automatically generate a new CycloneDX release. That's the ideal, because the bindings updating, relying on the bindings being updated is not enough, I'll just say.
Yeah, I mean for offline, yeah. It's gonna get really complicated with 2.0. I
Yeah.
don't think we're gonna be able
Yeah.
to do it at all in 2.0. But for the 1.x releases, yeah, we might be able to do that.
Yeah,
Just
basically anything in the schema directory, if it gets updated, we need to figure out how to create a bot or something to auto-generate a point release, basically.
right.
So people get notified that the core spec's been updated, basically.
Yeah, that's going to be problematic because we're going to have a lot of external schemas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
this is just for the algorithms.
But actually, we'll be like the world of AI that creates new releases every couple hours for some of the tools. So hey, join the club.
I need to create a bot for myself just so I can like self-replicate.
Yeah, I'm just making a mental note that we need to start automating this stuff, and I think it's good. It's overdue. Ever since we did the SPDX stuff, the tooling. Like I said, the tooling, we slept for a while. We didn't update the license scanner in MySpawn utility because we just got a notice that we started encountering licenses and we hadn't updated in several quarters. Basically, this offline list.
Yep.
Just quickly, Steve, the bot you mentioned is now called Agent, and I just quickly have a question regarding the versioning here, if that's fine. Because I fixed there's a 1.7 version, but I don't know how you do it with others, like if it involves to a 1.8, which I think will not exist, but still, like how do you just add an only new line, or is there kind of a outside parameter that will be set, or how is that
Well, I
done?
mean, it's up to you whether or not, I don't have a strong opinion whether or not you want the enums in here or if you want like a separate schema just for the enums.
Right, sorry.
If
Yeah.
you want to keep it separate, that's fine. I'll show you what we do with SPDX. We basically have a 1.0 of the schema itself, and then it corresponds to the SPDX license list version.
Okay, I see.
Now,
Okay.
for the now this is based on an old branch. I think the latest SPDX license list is 3.26, if I remember
That's
right.
correct. That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. So this is an old branch. If you go to the master, it should be 3.26, I believe.
And I will make note that these included deprecated licenses, so it's historic as well. So
Yes.
if these licenses get deprecated, that's maintained separately on the SPDX site.
Yes.
I see.
So we could do something similar. Obviously, we're not going to have a version for this, but if you want to use like a date, a timestamp as kind of appended to the version or whatever you feel works best, yeah, that might work.
Okay, that's good. Thanks.
Yep. All right. Was there any more things for cryptography? Is that all that we have? I have not had a chance to work on the script for the curves yet. So that's still on my to-do list. I'll hopefully get a chance to do that over the next week or two. And that's going to be kind of a similar thing to what we have here with the algorithm families. I think the next step, Nicholas, is once you actually get that enum list done, how do then we reference that enum in the 1.7 schema itself?
Yes. I mean, as part, like which property we add, or
Which
like,
property? I mean, we
yeah.
know technically how to do
Yeah.
it, right? I showed you
Okay.
how we do it with SPDX,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
But where in the 1.7 schema are we actually going to put that?
Okay. Yeah. That's a good point. I think we just my point of it to it, we need a new property in the algorithm properties called algorithm family that will reference basically the enum of the
Okay.
other schema. But
All right.
yeah.
Yeah, the
Feel free
goal
to
then is
discuss.
to then use that enum. And if you want more information about that, you can reference the cryptographic definitions to get all the information about that family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So how do you, so pardon my ignorance, but how do you handle other, like if, you know, if there's a scanner or something, or something, like licenses, there's always like, it's either deterministic ID or it's other, and then there's a way to basically describe it and, or, you know, encode some representation of the license, or, you know, is there an equivalent concept in this case?
That's a good point.
Because that's the one thing the list does not provide, is the other part aspect. So if you want to have clear instructions saying if you have a new algorithm and we haven't updated our, like SPDX, we have a new license, we don't know what it is, or we encounter variants, like we encounter variants in the wild, people can at least say that have an other field they can check, and they can actually describe what they found and actually encode the actual, so, you know, encode the license in that case. Not that
I
we're
think we can likely use the existing fields for that. Yes. Let's see. I don't think we made any changes to.
I think in
that.
general, we can use that. The question is what we do then with the algorithm family. For sure, you can, it's optional, so you can just don't use it if it's not listed there. But if you want to explicitly say that it's different algorithm family and not an unknown or something, that's, yeah.
Where is this going? Is it in algorithm properties, or is it somewhere else?
I mean, that would be my suggestion, but as I said, feel free to have different opinions.
Yeah, because the component name could be that, you know, unknown variant, right?
True. Yeah, the name could still be.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we use in the examples, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, this is also part of the pattern, I guess, to use that for a name. And if it's not applicable because it's not in there in the list, then you can just use any string kind of as a name. Or
Right. We'll have to make sure that our documentation is very clear on what the
yes,
expectations are.
I think that's key. But I think but with the current schema, we don't limit us in terms of this case. We just have to kind of say how what we would prefer and request. But it's not like we miss anything when we with the current schema basically to express this, just how we define it.
Right, exactly. Okay. Yeah, this is where my curve thing goes to, right? Okay. All right. All right, so you'll make those changes, Nicholas?
Yes, I will
And-
update the Python script and add this family property then. Yeah.
Okay. and I will work on the script for the curves over the next week or two. I've been spending a tremendous amount of time, just FYI, I've been spending a tremendous amount of time since the JSON schema is our source of truth for the English version of the standard itself, the PDF that is the standard. We historically have gone through this really painful process of creating a script that generates Markdown. The Markdown is converted to a Word document. We have a special Word template that gets converted to Pandoc that then generates a PDF. It is gruelingly painful, especially since Microsoft unfortunately doesn't follow their own specification. So we have to actually modify the OpenXML manually through Lua scripts. It's really awful. Anyway, TC39, which is the JavaScript folks, have created a markup called EC markup. It's a HTML5 extension, and what they do over in JavaScript land now is run this particular build that simultaneously can generate both online documentation as well as that pixel perfect PDF. And they leverage a bunch of CSS print properties that none of the web browsers support, but a few of the print specific CSS processors actually do support. So it's a really, really interesting way to simplify the conversion of a specification into the final documents, the final deliverables that consumers would actually use. I'm in the process of taking that script that, again, the JSON schema is our source of truth here. I'm in the process of taking that script that parses all the JSON of the schema and then creates the human readable documentation. I'm in the process of converting that from generating Markdown to generating EC markup so that we can run all these tools that TC39 have contributed. So I'm making progress. It's probably going to take at least another 3 weeks for me to flesh that out. But once it's done, it's going to greatly simplify us creating the human readable versions of the standards going forward. Let's see. Does anyone else have anything, topics that they wanted to bring up before maybe we shift over to Ian's email?
Nope.
Okay.
Nothing.
No.
All right. Very good. We one last bit, I think, once we actually get these last remaining things kind of in place, Nicholas, I think we should likely start updating the CBOM guide, and you know, for the eventual 1.7 release, right? So when 1.7 is released, we can simultaneously update the CBOM guide. We're doing something similar for patents as well. So patents are being introduced as a bunch of, and there's a bunch of other things that are more SBOM related. So we're going to be updating the SBOM guide at the exact same time. So it'd be great to drop 1.7 and simultaneously drop the guide so that people can know how to use some of the new stuff.
Yep.
So once we get done with the technical stuff here, we can maybe pivot to working on the documentation.
Yes. It's perfect.
Awesome.
Another angle for kind of liking the open source world now with all the nice AI tools that are out there. I make so much use of them because everything around CBOM is open source, is there. So they have a ton of information about that. So it's really, really nice to utilize that information. So,
but have you vibe coded creating a
No.
CBOM tool yet?
I mean, there is actually wait, I can quickly share that. Just FYI, there is a part of IBM that does work with the B agent and stuff, and they did a POC to generate C-bombs using B agent. It's I shared it in the chat. It's basically a workflow. You can see it takes a Git URL, and then it starts cloning it, identify algorithms, and creating. You can see it. It's basically just a POC. It's a good start, but yeah, not yet fully kind of compliant. But yeah, just FYI.
I will have to take a look at this. Always interested in seeing how AI can simplify my task.
Yeah.
Without introducing more grueling proofreading work.
True. That's a danger.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Shifting gears. Ian, you had sent an email on May 30th about some 5G type of questions, and seeing if we can get the CBOM spec to represent 5G algorithms in the specification, correct?
Yeah, look, I suppose maybe for those that we weren't on the call last time when I was kind of explaining this, that I suppose, yeah, artists, we work on the standard side of things, and you know, obviously everybody's kind of now what we work on predominantly telecom, so everyone's looking at migrating now to PQC, so you know, doing inventory of assets. So, you know, I've been promoting actually the fact that, you know, the valuing actually implementing a consistent CBOM to make it easier for them to, I suppose, get that inventory of assets. And more so based on what I've been looking at from what you guys have been doing is that, you know, if there are two entities, and I some slides maybe just to sort of show this kind of work in the 5G architecture, the standardized architecture from 3GPP, you know, you've got entities that talk to each other with standards in reference interfaces like N1, N2. So what we've got is kind of a standardized architecture with standardized reference interfaces, and on those interfaces they use standard protocols. Might be TLS, might be some other protocols, but they're using, for the most part, just standard cryptography, you know, AES and RSA, elliptic curve algorithms, etc. But there was two that I mentioned there. One is what is called 5G AKA. And when you actually, that's just a kind of a name, we'll say, but behind that, there's actually three implementations depending on different regions. So there's one is called Millinage, which is used predominantly in the US, which we focus on. So really, that's the one that I suppose I'm a bit more interested in. And when you look at that, it's an AES protocol actually using on the encryption, is it counter mode, and then on the authentication level, I think it's using cipher-based message authentication codes. And when I was looking actually on Basil's, I think they're actually included in the kind of algorithm descriptor. So I think the algorithms are there for Millinage, but I'd have to check. But it just kind of, we've got this, we'll call it name descriptor Millinage. So it's just kind of one that's used in 3GPP, and same with 5G AKA. And what that's used for actually behind the scenes is it authenticates the SIM with an authentication server. So it's actually a symmetric key encryption behind it. So actually when the SIM is burnt, there's a key on there that's a symmetric key. There's actually a database. It was HLR in the old days, I think, because in 4G it was called HSS, and 5G authentication server. Fundamentally, they all do the same, really. Is, you know, there's kind of they call it an IMSI, which is kind of just a long digit code. The first 5 denotes the country and the mobile network, and then that allows you then to look up, well, whose network is this? We can go to their database, and then we can actually then derive the keys to authenticate that SIM card. So that's what's really happening. In China, they came up with their own version called Zook. So, you know, if we were looking to do this and it was going to be widely deployed, maybe, you know, we should look at that. And then in Europe, there was one called Snow, which was, I think, came from Ericsson. And I'm not sure how widely that's used, actually. So that's kind of one of the protocols. The other one is one called PRINS, as it's called there. And when you look underneath it, actually, all it is really just TLS and JOSE for kind of authenticating or encrypting the messages that are kind of passed across. So it's standard cryptography underneath it. They've just got these labels, really. And so in a similar way, what I was thinking of doing, and I don't know if it's possible to do this, but and just kind of just hopefully getting some guidance and ideas of how I can progress this, without kind of having to lean on you guys too much, was can I develop kind of a schema that would be kind of a model for 3GPP architecture? Actually, shall I just show the slides for everyone that didn't get the email? Maybe just
Sure. You should have sharing. I'm looking at the Word document you sent as well. I didn't see that the first time you sent the email. I just found it.
how do I share?
Same.
Oh,
Same.
there we go. Yeah. Got it.
Because really, I mean, you're just extending the algorithms, the enum for the algorithms and the protocols that we support. And
Yeah, I mean, they're there. I think for the most part, they're there. Now, I need to check if there was anything proprietary, and it might be just some kind of different kind of coding schemes or something like that. There might be some labels that, that's what we can define within we'll call it I think you mentioned it as an application schema kind of thing, more than it being kind of, so this is kind of the 3GPP architecture, if some of you are familiar, UE is the actual handset user equipment, RAN radio access network. This UPF is called a user plane function that allows you to kind of manage the actual user traffic that flows backwards and forwards, from the internet or the applications. And all of these other bits and pieces across the top are things that manage mobility, authentication, session management, etc. So like they've all got these kind of different sort of functions. They're all called network functions, in fact, and they've got these reference interfaces, and for the most part they're underpinned with TLS. Now that's the standardized architecture. In implementation, there might be scenarios where I've heard that some carriers turn off some of the encryption to actually get more performance out of the box. So even though it's been standard, so that's a good point, so that's a real scenario, is that, like, when you're trying to get this inventory of assets, rather than just saying, well, that's what it should have, is what's really deployed. So I think that's what I've been trying to sort of talk to sort of the carriers about, is like, we know that in certain cases, what I thought was quite interesting from the work you were doing as we migrate towards quantum resistant algorithms, that, when a user plane function is talking to a RAN, and they might be from two different vendors, one might be from Ericsson, one Nokia, as an example, that, we need to know that what's the kind of the migration sort of capabilities between, and, compatibility between those two boxes. So actually, that's kind of like, if I zoom in slightly, that's kind of, we did a paper on this where we were trying to look at all the cryptography. So that's kind of a lot of the cryptography it's in there. You can see it's IPsec, TLS, JOSE, TLS, auth, DTLS, IPsec. So yeah, that's it. Some of this RAN stuff here, I'll have to have a look at to see if there's anything proprietary in the algorithms there for security, but they'd be very proprietary sort of radio access type protocols. So rather than being kind of internet IP based protocols that they refer to. So that's something that I need to look at if we're going to really truly model this. Do we need to sort of have these kind of interfaces obviously defined? But I think for the most part, we'll be talking around these are all IP traffic based protocols. So I think that's kind of where a lot of the transition will be, obviously, to PQC. So I think that's really where the focus area is. So my thoughts were, if we could create an application-specific schema that could actually have all the labels, the tags, the relationships for 5G that could sit on top of the CBOM, and then it could kind of make sense of when we get a CBOM, how it overlays onto the 5G architecture. That's kind of really my thoughts behind this. So I was kind of maybe looking to see if that made sense, if that was something that was possible within the, what's there today within the CBOM, and maybe just to get some pointers of how I could go about this, and how hierarchically I need to look at this as well. In a nutshell. All right.
Let's see. If possible, I would like to see if we can support your use cases in 1.7 of the spec natively, without you having to develop an external schema to support it. One of the
Right.
reasons being is that JSON is not extensible. It is impossible to have a hardened schema and make it extensible at the same time. And one of the requirements that we have is obviously DoD and related type of things, so that the schema is in fact hardened. It cannot be extended. So you'd really almost have to develop a schema that was essentially proprietary and similar to CBOM, but not CBOM. So that would kind of break
Right.
any kind of compatibility. So if we can do this
Okay.
in 1.7 proper, I would prefer that if possible.
That makes
And
sense to me. I'm just trying to think if then there was kind of, I'm trying to think what's the equivalent, if there was kind of not a schema, but there was kind of some overlay that said this is what you would use and this is how you model the
right.
relationships. And
Yeah,
I don't know what that is. As I say, I'm learning this.
it's almost like
So
a mapping.
apologies.
It's almost like a mapping, right?
Yeah.
This is how you would do it. This is the guidance on how you would do it. And maybe that's one thing we kind of help you with is, like, we create, like, as you've probably seen, we create the authoritative guide to CBOM, and maybe the step for ATIS is to maybe take that guidance and make it applicable to your industry as a separate publication, right? This is how you should
Right.
do it. And
Right.
I think we can likely help you with that. But I'd like to understand first, like, where the gaps are. And I think you've identified a few of the gaps, right?
Right.
And I think we can probably fill in those gaps. And we talked about one of them today, where we're discussing the algorithm families and the definitions of the algorithm families, right? Well,
Mhm.
I think there's a couple different places that we can enhance for 1.7 to fill in most of what you want to represent here. And then, like I said, we can kind of help you with maybe a few different examples so that you can actually take that back to your community and actually create a corresponding guide for implementers.
That'd be perfect. And I think that's the way we wanted to go, is that we can produce some kind of, whether it be a best practice document, not a standard, because like obviously CBOM is,
Right.
but to say, look, as a best practice, if you were to take the CycloneDX CBOM and use this kind of, reference sort of definitions, set the definitions. That's the word I was looking for earlier. Sorry.
Okay.
And then this is how it would be applicable to this application. Yeah.
Got it.
And I'm not like wanting to burden you guys, because I know like you're kind of in the kind of getting the CycloneDX core working, but just to give me some pointers that I can then, and again, it's to try and get a community sort of on board. You know, certainly I've got one of the main carriers on board at the moment. I'm just trying to get the two other ones, you know, because they can see the value of using CBOM, a consistent CBOM, than getting just proprietary information from each of their vendors and trying to align the information and make sense of it,
Right. You were one of the things that I'm looking at in the Word document that you sent. You provided an example.
Well, forgive me, that was like my very basic understanding with a bit of help from ChatGPT to sort of give me guidance. So I'll be honest, I kind of am not that familiar with it, but I just said if I can try and produce something that kind of might make sense to you guys, but I'm totally open. I've got no prescribed sort of direction with this. I'm just trying to say this is kind of what I'm trying to do is bridge the gap between, what is kind of a fixed architecture and potential of using CycloneDX as a CBOM for that, and what we need to do to sort of provide this set of definitions that it can actually make it easier for the carriers to use, and ultimately then they can say to their vendors, can you give us that your information about the cryptographic assets in this JSON format.
Got it. For the next call, I think, we want to review on the next call. We want to review the updated PRs from Nicholas and Basil for that matter. But I think it would be interesting if to kind of understand a little bit more about the interfaces and 1 and 2
Okay.
and 3, that sort of thing. Because I
Yeah.
want to figure out how we can model that in CycloneDX. If we're missing something,
All right.
I'm fairly confident with a few minor changes, we can model the cryptography. I don't actually think that's a problem. What I'm interested in is all the inner, how they all kind of relate to one another. That's a little bit less clear to me.
Yeah, they're all kind of peer-to-peer. As you can see here, they're kind of peer-to-peer relationships. And that's where I think that, my thoughts were kind of that, as I was showing here, this UPF has a peer relationship, obviously, with this, it's called a G node B, but that's the RAN, the radio access, cell sites, as you know them. And the protocol at the highest level is called GTPU. But it's just using IPsec underneath, really, so from a cryptography point of view, it's there. But obviously what I'm wanting to do is maybe say, well, look, this is the entity, this is the reference interface, can't remember which one it was, say N4 for the sake of argument, and it's using GTPU, and this is the cryptography that's underneath it. And I think that's it really. And so it's kind of just saying that these are the standard definitions for modeling, 3GPP 5G architecture infrastructure, and to some degree then we can actually we can build the relationships between these nodes by using that reference interface, that then when you get that inventory of information, you can actually kind of connect it to say, well, look, we've got incompatibilities here because this one shows that it has the ability to be extensible to sort of new PQC algorithms. This one doesn't.
Right. I think the other thing that we should likely discuss on the next call is you've got in your example, you've got some namespaces for the properties like 3GPP, for example. We might want to consider actually registering, like we have a registration process for that where you can
Okay.
actually reserve that namespace. It's not formal like DNS is, but we do have an
Right.
index of what the registered namespaces are. So we should probably figure out what that is. That way you can put industry specific things in that, and everyone else is actually going to know what those things mean.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Would you send me just a quick note of the link for that, if you don't mind? Then.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just pull it up real quick. I'll put it in the chat. Let's.
But does this make sense? Kind of what I'm trying to do.
I think so. I think so. It's not. Yeah.
Yes,
Basil,
but
you're gonna say?
Basil, go ahead.
Yeah.
Or Nicholas.
I didn't notice the Word document as well, so just until now, but I think that gives some good input also for adding. I think just from the cryptography side, there would be some additions to the protocols, right? Some explicit ones. For example, the prints, right, would be, or OWASP. I mean, that's something also used beside your use case, right? I mean, some additions there, and then some additions to the algorithms as well, right? While I think some, or a lot, it seems that is based on like elliptic curves or AES should be already in the definitions, while some others, well, I see here, like 128 NEA 2 or NEA 3 could be something to add as well to this list, right?
Exactly. And I think for the most part, it looks like it's there, but what I need to do is kind of define it all and then say to you, is that all there already? And you can point to it, and then we can make the links to that, so to speak. That was the idea, in the definitions, we can say this is what it should be,
And I'm totally in favor too of supporting some of the algorithms that maybe not our countries use, but others do. So we've done the same
Well, I
thing
think
with.
if we do it, even though it's not going to be in the US,
Exactly.
maybe we should look at Zoc or
Yeah.
then it could be more broadly adopted then.
Yeah.
I can't
We
guarantee that, but I
support.
know certainly in the US, that it would be.
Yeah. And we support some in 1.6 or 1.7, maybe 1.7. We're supporting some hashing algorithms that I've never heard of, but are very popular in other parts of the world. So yeah, again, it's a worldwide standard. So we want to support them all. I put the link to the property taxonomy in the Zoom chat. That way you kind of have a little bit of the definition of what it is, and kind of what the expectations are when you actually register a namespace.
Thank you.
The idea, I mean, right now it's basically just in this repo, but the idea going forward is that the index itself would be available in a machine readable format, as well as the definitions of each namespace in the future. So theoretically, in the future, you'd actually be able to validate all these custom properties as well, which would be amazing. So this is a way for us to be extensible and have a hardened schema at the same time. Otherwise, it's just not possible.
See the note there from Board. Thanks. I'll have a look at that.
And we're about at time. So thank you all for joining. I thought this was a really productive conversation. Nicholas, I'll let you know as soon as I get my script done for the curves. And Basil, Nicholas, if you can kind of let me know, just DM me on Slack. Unfortunately, I get so many GitHub notifications that unfortunately most of them kind of go unnoticed. So just DM me on Slack if when you kind of get those done, and I'll make sure we merge those in. Okay.
It's good.
All right, everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and talk to you soon. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
See you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.